Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine this. A glittering world of diamonds suddenly overshadowed by, well, a colossal financial implosion.
Mm-hmm.
And right at the center, a man on the run, a chase spanning continents.
Quite the picture.
Yeah, we're diving straight into the recent arrest of Mehul Choksi in Belgium. This just happened, April 12th, 2025.
Just a couple of days ago.
Exactly. And how it all ties back to that absolutely mind-boggling fraud at the Punjab National Bank.
PNB, yeah. The scale is just huge.
Huge is an understatement. We're talking Rs 13,850 crore, which is, get this, around 2 billion US dollars. Just vanished into thin air.
Unbelievable amount.
So our aim today is to sort of navigate this dazzling drama, make sense of the key events, why the story has such staying power.
And maybe touch on some of the more, let's say, stranger twists.
Oh, definitely, because there are quite a few.
What's truly astounding from the get-go is just the sheer audacity, the scale of what's alleged here.
Right.
This wasn't some, minor accounting slip-up. This looks like a massive institutional failure at a major public bank.
Yeah.
These stories grab headlines, of course, but the how and the ripple effects are often pretty complex. So as we dig in, we need to understand not just what happened, but really how it was supposedly pulled off and what it means for, our financial systems more broadly.
Absolutely. So let's paint the picture. This whole thing really blew up publicly back in 2018.
Right, that's when PNB.
PNB suddenly finds this enormous multi-billion rupee hole in their books.
Nightmare scenario for a bank.
Totally. And the two central figures named in this alleged swindle were Mehul Choksi, he was chairman of Gitanjali Gems then,
Big name in jewelry.
and his nephew, Nirav Modi, another high-profile jeweler, big international presence.
Right, seen everywhere for a while.
Between roughly 2014 and 2017, these two are alleged to have orchestrated this truly massive siphoning of funds.
And the method they reportedly used is really key to understanding the whole thing. The vulnerabilities.
Okay.
It revolved around these financial instruments, letters of undertaking, LOUs, and foreign letters of credit, FLCs.
Right, the famous LOUs.
Essentially, these let companies linked to Choksi and Moby get loans from banks overseas, supposedly guaranteed by PNB.
Okay, so let's break down an LOU simply. It's like, imagine your friend wants to borrow money from someone they don't know.
Okay.
And you step in and say, hey, look, if my friend doesn't pay you back, I will. That's kind of what an LOU is, right? A bank giving assurance to another lender.
A guarantee, essentially. Yeah, that's a good analogy. PNB was issuing these LOUs, basically telling overseas banks, we've got your back if Choksi's or Modi's companies default.
The kicker is,
The really shocking part. These LOUs were allegedly issued without the proper sign-offs, without the necessary checks and balances within PNB itself. Exactly. So these international banks, they see what looks like a solid PNB guarantee.
because it's got PNB's name on it.
Right. So they trust it. They extend huge amounts of credit to the Choksi and Modi firms. But then, when those debts came due,
PNB was left holding the bag.
PNB was facing repayment demands for money they hadn't properly approved lending in the first place. The direct hit to PNB alone is estimated over Rs 6,000 crore.
6,000 crore, just the direct hit.
And the total alleged fraud, wrapping everything up, balloons to that massive Rs 13,850 crore figure.
13,850 crore.
The fact that these promises, these LOUs backed by PNB, could apparently be issued without tight controls, that points to a big vulnerability.
Yeah, it's not just one bad apple, maybe.
It suggests potential systemic weaknesses in how the bank was operating, its internal checks.
To really grasp that number, Rs 13,850 crore, that's like enough money to fund a small country's entire budget for a year, potentially.
It puts it in perspective.
Or bring it closer to home, you could probably buy a really, really nice coffee for every single person living in Mumbai, multiple times.
Okay, that's a lot of coffee.
It's just staggering. And here's where the timeline gets really, really suspicious. Just days before this whole thing explodes into the news, January 2nd, 2018. Mehul Choksi gets on a plane and leaves India.
Convenient.
Talk about timing, right? It certainly raises eyebrows, a lot of eyebrows.
Indeed. His departure, literally days before the scandal broke, was a huge red flag for investigators right from the start.
You'd think so.
It strongly suggested he knew what was coming and was getting out ahead of it, trying to evade the legal storm.
And his escape route wasn't exactly straightforward. After a bit of time in the U.S., he eventually lands in Antigua and Barbuda.
The Caribbean nation. Beautiful place.
Beautiful place, yes, but maybe more importantly for Choksi, a place that had, let's say, a less straightforward extradition setup with India compared to some others.
A potential safe haven, legally speaking.
And here's another unbelievable detail. He'd actually got citizenship there, in Antigua, back in 2017.
Before the scandal broke.
Yeah, through their citizenship by investment program. Invest a chunk of money, become a citizen.
So he was planning ahead.
It certainly looks like he was laying the groundwork for an exit strategy well in advance, doesn't it?
Getting citizenship in a country with, let's say, more complex extradition laws can definitely be a tactic for people trying to avoid legal issues back home. It creates major hurdles.
Right. But his time soaking up the Caribbean sun wasn't exactly smooth sailing forever.
No.
In May 2021, the story takes this really bizarre turn. Choksi disappears from Antigua.
Vanishes.
Gone. Only to suddenly reappear in Dominica, a nearby island.
Okay, how did that happen?
Well, his story was, wait for it, that he'd been kidnapped by Indian agents, he claimed, and forcibly taken there.
Kidnapped. Seriously. That's romantic.
I mean, you couldn't write this stuff. It sounds like a movie plot.
That abduction claim definitely added another really strange, complex layer to the whole saga.
Did anyone buy it?
Well, the courts in Dominica seemed a bit skeptical, let's say, but they didn't immediately send him to India either.
Oh.
Ultimately, they sent him back to Antigua, so he got to stay in the Caribbean a while longer.
Okay, so back to square one, sort of, back in Antigua. But then, 2024, the plot twists again.
Of course it does.
Choksi decides to move. To Belgium.
Belgium. Why Belgium?
Good question. Turns out his wife, Pretty Choksi, she's a Belgian citizen.
Ah, family connection.
And they reportedly have family ties in Antwerp, which, as everyone knows,
Is the diamond capital of the world.
Exactly, the irony. Plus, Choksi claimed he needed specialized medical treatment there for blood cancer.
Okay, so medical reasons and family ties. That was the official line.
That was the law.
His move to Belgium, though, brought in a whole new set of legal factors, while he cited health and family.
Indian authorities must have seen it differently.
Highly probable they saw it as another attempt to dodge the legal process back home. And they probably noted the rather striking irony, as you said.
Right. A guy wanted for a massive alleged diamond fraud, setting up shop in the world's diamond hub.
That's quite something.
You can just picture the Indian investigators thinking, okay, if he's well enough to fly to Belgium, set up there, he's well enough to come back and answer some questions.
That would be the logical conclusion from their perspective.
And it seems the Belgian authorities eventually came around to a similar view. It's been reported Choksi and his wife even got a residency card in Belgium just weeks before he was picked up.
Really? Weeks before?
Yeah, and some reports suggest he might not have fully disclosed his other citizenships when applying. Antigua, for instance.
Ooh, that could be problematic for him, if true.
You'd think so. Authorities don't usually like potential misrepresentations on residency applications.
No, they tend to take that quite seriously.
And then the moment everyone was waiting for, really.
Yeah?
April 12th, 2025, Belgian police arrest Mehul Choksi.
Finally apprehended. Where?
At a hospital, where he was apparently seeking medical attention.
You're kidding. At a hospital.
Nope. Talk about the long arm of the law catching up with you, even during a checkup, maybe. Unfortunate timing for him, but a huge development in this long, long chase.
It's certainly an ironic setting for the arrest, even the health claims, but it happening at all shows the persistence of the Indian agencies and, crucially, the cooperation from Belgium.
Right. So he's in custody in Belgium. The big question now is, what happens next? Will he finally be sent back to India?
That's the million-dollar question, or maybe the $2 billion question in this case.
Good point. Well, good news for India, there is an extradition treaty between India and Belgium.
That's key. An extradition treaty is basically that formal pact where two countries agree to return people accused or convicted of crimes to face justice where the crime allegedly happened.
So the framework is there.
It is. And the agencies in India, the CBI, that's the Central Bureau of Investigation, handling major crimes, and the ED, the Enforcement Directorate, focused on financial crime.
They've been after him for years.
Relentlessly. They've already sent 2 non-bailable warrants issued by Indian courts over to Belgium. One from 2018, another from 2021.
Non-bailable means, even if he were in India, no bail.
Exactly. Due to the seriousness of the charges. So the Indian authorities are now putting together the formal extradition request, all the paperwork for the Belgian courts.
But you know his lawyers aren't just going to roll over.
Oh, absolutely not. They'll be preparing a strong defense. A major argument for bail will likely be his health, the blood cancer diagnosis.
Right. Which is serious, of course.
It is. But the Indian side will likely counter, saying, look, he traveled internationally, seemed to be setting up a life in Belgium. He's fit enough to stand trial. Plus, there's the matter of the missing billions.
Yeah, I'm freaked that.
And his legal team will almost certainly challenge the extradition itself.
On what grounds?
Well, they might bring up his Antiguan citizenship again. Argue any legal stuff should happen under Antiguan law, even though the alleged crimes were in India.
Okay. What else?
Another big point will probably be the Interpol Red Corner Notice situation.
Ah, yes, the red notice. Explain that quickly.
Sure. A Red Corner Notice, or RCN, is basically an international alert from Interpol, like a global wanted notice. It asks member countries to find and provisionally arrest someone pending potential extradition.
Okay.
India's CBI got one for Choksi back in 2018, but, and this is crucial, Interpol actually dropped it in 2023.
They dropped it. Why?
Choksi argued the case against him was politically motivated. And apparently, Interpol's internal commission agreed, or at least found enough grounds to remove the notice based on their rules.
Wow, that must have been a blow for India.
It was definitely a setback for their efforts at the time. It doesn't kill extradition via treaties like the one with Belgium, but it meant they had to rely more on direct diplomatic and legal channels with specific countries, like Belgium.
It just shows how complicated this international legal stuff gets, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Different national laws, international bodies like Interpol with their own rules, and then individuals trying to navigate or maybe exploit those systems.
And speaking of individuals, we absolutely have to talk about the connection to his nephew, Nirav Modi.
Inextricably linked. Their cases are two sides of the same coin, really.
So Nirav Modi, also a big-name jeweler, he also fled India early 2018.
Right. He ended up in London and was arrested there in May 2019.
And unlike Choksi, who was moving around,
Modi's been in a UK jail ever since his arrest, fighting extradition tooth and nail through the British courts.
how's that going for him?
It seems like he might be running out of road in the UK.
Yeah.
Reports suggest his appeals are mostly exhausted. He could be nearing the point of being sent back to India.
So potentially both uncle and nephew could end up back in India around the same time.
It's a possibility. It's like this bizarre race against accountability. Both their companies, Choksi's Gitanjali Gems, Modi's Firestar Diamonds, were allegedly central to the PNB fraud.
Using their inside connections, supposedly.
Apparently using connections within PNB to get those LOUs issued. Basically, treating a major public bank like their personal ATM.
And the amount they allegedly got away with, just staggering.
It is. The Enforcement Directorate, the ED, they've managed to seize or attach assets linked just to Choksi and Gitanjali Gems worth over Rs 2,565 crore so far.
2,500 crore recovered,
Right?
less seized. What kind of assets?
All sorts. Valuable jewelry, properties in India and overseas, cars, bank accounts, company shares, even a lot of gold.
Sounds like a treasure hunt.
A high-stakes one.
Mm.
The CBI's initial estimate was that Choksi's actions alone cost PNB over Rs 6,000 crore directly.
Right.
And add in Nirav Modi's alleged part, you get to that total fraud figure of Rs 13,850 crore.
Mind-boggling. Has the ED done anything else?
Oh, yeah. They've conducted raids at something like 130 different places across India, trying to trace all the money. And they've filed multiple detailed charge sheets against Choksi. That's the formal legal document outlining the evidence.
So they built a case.
A substantial one, it seems. Plus, Indian courts have okayed the sale, the monetization of some of Choksi's seized assets.
To pay back PNB.
That's the goal, to try and recover some of the huge losses PNB suffered. It's a positive step, but recovering that full amount, that's going to be a long, tough process. Years, probably.
And here's something that really makes you think, or maybe makes you angry.
What's that?
Way back in July 2016, well before the public knew anything, a whistleblower, a guy named Hariprasad SV, he actually wrote a formal letter to the Prime Minister's office.
Okay. About what?
Raising red flags, pointing out suspicious stuff he saw on PNB's balance sheets. He basically warned something was seriously wrong.
He sounded the alarm early.
He did, but tragically, it seems like his warnings didn't get acted on quickly enough. By the time PNB officially admitted the fraud in 2018,
Choksi and Modi were gone.
long gone. Mr. Hariprasad actually commented recently on Choksi's arrest. Said it was welcome, but he's still skeptical about extradition actually happening soon.
Why skeptical?
He suggested Choksi's wealth might still buy him time, help him fight it off. His early letter really highlights the potential system failure, doesn't it? Why weren't those warnings taken more seriously?
It raises serious questions about communication channels, or maybe a culture where whistleblowers weren't listened to properly. Big implications for governance in public sector banks.
Which brings us to a really important point. Why should our listeners care about this complex saga?
Right. Why does it matter to the average person?
Well, when huge public banks like PNB take hits this big, who ultimately pays?
Taxpayers, often through government bailouts to keep the bank stable.
Exactly. And it erodes public trust in the whole financial system. You know, regular folks often jump through hoops to get a small loan for a house or a business.
While these incredibly wealthy individuals allegedly walked away with billions relatively easily.
It definitely raises questions about fairness. Are there different rules for different people?
It certainly fuels that perception. And this case also starkly shows the challenges of cross-border financial crime today. People can use differences in laws, citizenship rules across countries to try and dodge accountability. Choksi being chased from India to the U.S. to the Caribbean, now Europe. It shows how global this is.
Right. Needs global cooperation.
Absolutely critical. Belgium's willingness to cooperate now,
Yeah.
especially compared to the difficulties in Antigua, that's a significant positive step for India.
But extradition itself is still a long road.
It can be. Very long, full of legal hurdles and appeals.
So what are Choksi's likely next moves now he's in Belgian custody?
Well, he's in jail there currently. His lawyers will definitely push hard for bail, citing his health.
If he gets bail.
Could allow him to fight extradition through the Belgian courts, appealing decisions, which could drag things out significantly.
And if he doesn't get bail?
He could find himself back in India much sooner, facing a raft of serious charges. Cheating, criminal conspiracy, money laundering, corruption.
A lot waiting for him.
And back in India, the ED is still pushing to formally declare him a fugitive economic offender.
What would that do?
Give them even wider powers to seize and sell off his assets, here and maybe abroad. The CBI has its charge sheets ready. And everyone will be watching Nirav Modi's case in the UK too.
Because it could set a precedent.
Potentially influence Choksi's case, yeah.
And just to hammer home how wild this whole thing is, let's just quickly recap the truly unbelievable bits.
There are a few.
The alleged kidnapping from Antigua. Straight out of a spy thriller.
Unsubstantiated, but certainly dramatic.
Getting Antiguan citizenship months before the scandal breaks. Coincidence? Maybe.
Or maybe careful planning.
And then moving to Antwerp, the diamond capital, while wanted for a massive diamond fraud.
The sheer boldness is remarkable, although the medical claim adds a layer. Maybe genuine need combined with family proximity?
Could be, but the optics.
Wow. These elements show incredible nerve. Maybe a belief he could operate above the law. But his arrest in Belgium shows there are limits, especially with international cooperation.
Yeah, that cooperation seems key. This whole PNB mess, the chase for Choksi and Modi, it's just such a stark reminder of vulnerabilities in big banks.
Even established public sector banks. It really underscores the need for strong oversight, tight internal controls, good prevention measures.
Things have tightened up since 2018, right? Regulations.
Yes, steps have been taken. Regulatory frameworks strengthened, but it requires constant vigilance, continuous improvement. You can't just rest.
And it really hits home how vital international teamwork is in fighting financial crime these days. Sharing information, cooperating.
Absolutely critical in a globalized world.
Ultimately, the Mehul Choksi story is just complex. It's finance, law, cross borders, international politics, alleged crime on a massive scale.
His arrest in Belgium is a huge chapter, a big milestone in trying to get accountability. But the road ahead, still likely long, winding, full of more legal twists and turns.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into this, well, dazzling and often unbelievable saga, it definitely leaves you thinking about financial crime, how hard it is to achieve justice sometimes, especially when billions are involved and borders are crossed. What are the real lessons we take away from this glittering yet deeply concerning drama? That's definitely something to mull over.